My name is Charlene Boyd, and I'm at Mount St. Vincent, and I'm here with Robert Hellrigel.
I'm Robert Hellrigel. I'm at Mount St. Vincent, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Charlene Boyd.
So I'm going to begin this by asking how you came to Providence, Robert.
There was a recruiter who reached out, and he was very persuasive. It was not a time in our lives that we were even thinking of relocating or taking another job. We had just adopted our son. We had just built this home that my wife and I had done a lot of the work ourselves, so we had a lot of sweat equity into this project and the house. Our daughter was doing great. She loved her school. She was only 8 years old. And this recruiter was very persistent, and he kept saying, come out here, you should really meet these people. And I happened to be working for the Sisters of Providence on the East Coast in Massachusetts. And he said, it's a wonderful organization. And then he found out that I had an aunt that lived out here. And he said, come out, interview, and have a free weekend on me. You get to see your aunt, and enjoy a nice weekend in Seattle. So I had done some of my homework around which ministries were part of what was then called the long-term care division of Providence in the Washington region. And I knew very well about Mount St. Vincent, and I knew about Charlene Boyd. And I had known about the work that you did with the Pioneer Network. I had known about the transformation at the Mount and all the great work that you had done. So I was really excited. That was part of the interview, and part of the lure to come out was to actually see the Mount and to meet Charlene and to learn more about the program. And so I knew about you before I even met you.
Chuck Hawley was the person who established the long-term care division for home and community care. He brought in housing, he brought in infusion pharmacy, he brought in skilled nursing, he brought in low-income housing.
PACE program.
Because of his skills, he just got elevated into public policy. And so his position became vacant. And guess what? Robert came. And here was this young guy coming out. And I remember I was at some sort of retreat, and there was this baby at the other end, and trying to work with your wife back home and to see if this was a job for you. And I thought, Chuck usually knows what he's doing. And so he hired Robert. I think I went through such mourning to lose this mentor that started this division and was no longer there. And then we had Robert.
That was one of the hardest things about the transition, was how do you walk in the shoes of Chuck Hawley?
Absolutely. But you created a huge vision as well and carried it out even further and developed what we have today of home and community care.
I still can remember when I became a licensed nursing home administrator, I was hired at 23 years old to be the administrator of a long-term care facility in Connecticut. It was a family-owned business. And the owner, he saw something and he said, I'm going to hire this 23-year-old kid. I had just graduated college and I did my internship to get my license as a nursing home administrator. I interviewed with him and spent kind of an afternoon, touring the property and talking with him. By the time I got home, there was a message on my machine offering me a job. And I remember when I started, I had absolutely no idea what my job would be. And for 2 weeks, I did nothing but walk around and meet with people and sit down and talk to people and hear their stories. And I talked to all of the employees, I talked to the residents. I would ask them why they were here, and then what do they think my job should be? Like, what's the most important thing about my job that I should know? And the amazing thing I remember after about 2 weeks of doing these interviews, and to a person, every single employee said the same thing. They were there because they wanted to provide care and they wanted to support the residents. And it hit me as I was driving home that I'm not a caregiver. The closest that I came to healthcare was I was an EMT when I was in high school. So it dawned on me as I'm interviewing all these people that if they're all there for the residents, then maybe my job is to be there for them. And in essence, then we're all there for the residents. There are so many places in Providence that carry the spirit, the legacy of Providence. I think about places like, St. Pat's in Missoula, where, one of the, Providence has been there forever. I think about, the Cherry Hill campus of Swedish and, what an iconic, ministry that was to the Sisters of Providence. But this place to me has always been, kind of the cornerstone or the embodiment of what the sisters wanted to do, what they first set out to do when they first came to the Pacific Northwest. They didn't come to the Pacific Northwest to build hospitals. They came to the Pacific Northwest to ease suffering, to address the needs of people. And the first act of kindness they did was they brought in an elderly man who was homeless, and they gave him a cot by the stove in that small structure that they had that was inside Fort Vancouver at the time. So here was 5 women inviting in a man to sleep in a cot in their kitchen in this tiny house. That to me is what the Mount has always stood for. I think what happens here every day on the Mount, I think is as close to the mission of the sisters as what they had in mind when they were first invited to come out here to help to ease suffering and to really make a better community. The mission called us to serve as expressions of God's love. That's a really awesome responsibility. How do you serve as a reflection of God's love to people who are really in need? And I started thinking about love. It's a word in a professional setting that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, which I think is crazy. What it really, to me, came down to was that the absolute opposite of love is fear. And that those are the 2 purest of emotions that we have. You know, the notion of serving as an expression of God's love meant that you had to do this work without fear of being wrong, without fear of being judged, without fear of making a mistake. You were here to serve, and that if you trusted the mission, then the only way to do that was to lead from a place of love. The idea of understanding that we move toward and become that which we think about, that if we're going to think about anything in this organization, think about completing our work from a place of love, and that should be the mantra.
Thank you, Robert.
It's been a wonderful experience. I can't tell you how much I've learned from you over the years.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
It's been just a great experience.